Welcome to the JAMODI podcast, where we interview coaches and leaders to find out not just what they do, but how they do what they do. Becoming the best version of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. How do you teach shooting in your program?
Okay. How do we teach it? Well, I mean, you mean like from a fundamental standpoint, or just like what are some of the things that we do?
Both.
Okay, both. Well, as so much of it starts down at our feet. Okay, and we will be, we'll spend a lot of times as we're watching them, like during warm up stuff. And you use the same terminology, good feet, good feet, good feet, such that as you're watching them go through, all this stuff. So it starts there with us, we talk, okay, feet hip width apart, if you're right-handed, right foot slightly in front, if you're left-handed, left foot slightly in front, uh, elbow in, wrist cock, we should see wrinkles in your wrist. Try to make sure the offhand's not, affecting the shot in any way. If you're right-handed, it's kind of by the right eyebrow here. Hold that follow through. All of those things that we all teach. But then when we get into our actual drills, when you get that part, and I think it's really important, and we do stress this, man, get in here and spend a lot of time close to the basket. Really take the time to do some of the boring stuff. And what's crazy is some of the best players we've had, some of the best scorers we've had, would spend a ridiculous amount of time right there close to the rim. EJ Clark led the area in scoring when he was with us his senior year. Byron Scobie a few years back led the area in scoring. And they would get in there, and EJ was fanatical about it. He might stay 3 feet away for 30 minutes, And but those guys were obsessed with shooting, and so starts there. Make sure we're grooving our shot, taking some time to get it going. Don't just walk in the gym and start jacking up threes. But once we get going into our drills, I mean, we shoot a ton of threes, as you know. We've already kind of discussed that. But everything we do, we preach working out a triple threat, working out of a stance. You hear stance all the time when it comes to defense.
Right.
But no, you need to be in a stance on offense. You need to be ready to play the game. And one of the things, I told the guys in the spring this year, and I think it's so important, sometimes we maybe lose sight of this, is urgency is a skill.
Nice.
Urgency is a skill. I mean, you have to have that to play this game at a high level. And what does that mean on the court? Well, it means being in a stance and being ready to play, being urgent about it, and that's part of it. So as we're doing everything, we're butt down, we're hands ready. The wrist is already cocked, to where I'm eliminating any kind of wasted motion once the ball gets to me. And then, we do a lot of the same stuff you do. We do green, yellow, red shooting. But one of the things I've gotten away from, we used to do 8-minute shooting, and that would get kind of monotonous. And I think they lose focus of, hey, being down in the stance, be ready every time for 8, because attention spans are getting shorter.
Sure.
So what we started doing late in the year is, okay, we're going to do all this stuff, but we're going to do it in 1-minute increments. Okay. We may work 5 spots. We may work right corner, right wing, top, left wing, left corner, but we're going minute on, minute off. Okay. And we tell our guys, okay, varsity guys, you need to be making at least 10 in a minute here. You guys, our top shooters, you need to be shooting for at least 12 makes in a minute. And, and we chart all that stuff, but, I think if you make them, hey, you're only going to go for a minute. Okay. They're able to, stay engaged with maintaining that stance, working on that shot prep. Whereas if you drag it out over 4 or 5 minutes, they tend to lose focus. And then there's the whole fatigue thing too. I mean, God, we do green, yellow, red, man, and some of our guys start getting tired on those.
That's right.
That last minute, and I don't know how game like that is. When you start getting tired and you're
like physically worn out. Not talking about legs, not talking about lungs. Physically worn out with your shoulder. I mean, there's an aspect of conditioning there, but I think when you nailed something, like the reason players miss in games is they practice too slow and they don't practice with pressure. And so how many times when we're working on their shooting in practice, do we allow them to be too slow and they don't have pressure? And you're right on the money. 8-minute shooting. It's something that I've done a ton, or we start our practice out. So skill work in the period after school practice, we start our practice with 100 threes, made threes. So they groups of 3 make 20 and then switch until all 3 of you done it at 5 spots. They have 15 minutes to do it. The only reason I'm okay with that volume mentality there is because of all the pressure that we've done with them during the period. So one of the reasons I bet why your guys make shots is there's a shorter time component where they know they have to give a certain amount of speed, and then you to give them, hey, 12 makes in a minute. Like that type of pressure, it's the only way. How do we make more shots in games? Practice with speed and pressure. And I think you're right on the money there.
And we do a lot of things where, like anyone else, where that next shot's going to have some pressure on it. Man, you got to make 2 in a row before you advance to the next spot.
In a rows, man. It's all about in a rows.
Maybe 3 in a row. And sometimes, here's what I really like is when you group them up. And I think everything needs to be competitive.
Yep.
Every single part of practice, if you can make it competitive, whether it's, okay, we got 5 groups in here and they're all competing against each other, or if it's 2 groups going, everything needs to be competitive, and there needs to be consequence for losing, and we still validate wins at the free throw line.
There you go. Yeah.
But it may be the in a rows. Okay, you 2 guys. Okay, we're going to go for 2. We're going to put 2 minutes on the clock. I'm just throwing a number out there, and we're going to work those 5 spots. And as a group, you 2, you got to make 3 in a row before you can advance to the next spot. How many 3 in a rows can you get in 2 minutes versus everybody else in here?
Yeah.
And you got to challenge them with stuff like that. Otherwise, they get into that lull, and you get frustrated as a coach, because I go back to urgency and how I think it's a skill. Well, it starts with us. We've got to be the one that bring the urgency. And then they start to kind of see, okay, this is the way. Okay. And then it becomes kind of a player led thing. They start to see, hey, when things are starting to slip, then they can kind of correct themselves. So at least that's what you hope you get to. But
thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.